Hello, my name is Emma Gross, and along with Virginia Blackstone and Mills Watts, we have completed our final market research project on gaining insight into factors that can influence interviews and job offers. One part of this project that we found interesting was how relevant this experiment was in our lives, and the factors that we believe would be of importance might not have made. What we decided to study was 4 different factors that could influence someone on what stage of the interview process they got to, and ultimately if that person got the job. We realized that there are many factors that could influence this, but to make our survey more surveyor friendly and to help us when running our regression, we decided to only look at 4 factors. These 4 factors were the amount of time they put into preparing for the interview, confidence that the interviewer had applying into an interview, past experience in the field of which they were applying, and finally, if they had any connections to the company they were applying. These 4 ingredients we felt would have the most influence on someone was to gain a job post-interview. This is relevant to us because of what stage of life our group is in. Virginia and I are both juniors, and Mills is a senior. We are looking to the real world for full-time jobs and internships. One of the stepping stones to get there is to know how to interview and set yourself apart from other interviewers. Therefore, it seemed natural to center our project around where we are in life. When we started our survey, our conceptual model made the most sense as illustrated above. We believe that the 4 factors that I have stated before of preparedness, confidence, experience, and connections all have an impact on interviews. Therefore, the interview acts as the moderator between those 4 factors and whether or not someone gets a job offer. Shifting onto our survey, the first part focused on demographic questions. The first question asked what your students were. The purpose of the question was to ensure that people taking the survey were of a similar age. Furthermore, this question helped us draw insight into what type of job students were looking for at that specific age. The next question asked for gender, and the last one asked what age they were. We then transitioned to a new block of questions centered around the variables we were testing. After we initially asked what specific company they had interviewed with, that way we could have it for our own records. Our first question was how far they had made it in the interview process, which was what we centered our other variables around. Our second question was open-ended and simply asked how many hours of preparation the respondent put into their interview. We thought that this was important to consider because it would generate an exact number associated with the amount of time each interviewee put towards their interview. Our next question built onto our mindset of entering into an interview with a feeling of being prepared. We utilized a semantic differential scale made up of 3 statements on a scale from 1 to 7. We used this number of scale points so that there was a clear median and made sure to include the numbers up top. The 3 different feelings we tested were feeling prepared, informed, and educated. Next, we wanted to ask another open-ended question that would formulate exact data around another important variable in our experiment, experience. We rationalized that job experience would positively affect the result of a job interview, so we simply asked for a count of the relevant jobs and or experiences that they had that related to the job at hand. Our last variable that we tested in our survey was the number of relevant connections that the interviewee had with the company that would have spoken on their behalf. We hypothesized that the more connections a person had, the greater chance they would have to receive the job. The best way to ask this question was again by offering a free response question which they would input this numerical data. After the respondents answered these questions, they were then directed to enter in data for 2 more job interviews and follow the exact same questions as before. This way, each respondent gave us 3 different job interview experiences, which led to a total of 89 experiences from 30 different respondents, which contributed to more valid results for our survey. When we ran the regression, I think we were all a bit surprised at the results we found. First, when we look at the amount of time spent preparing, the p-value is sitting high at 0.35. As we know, when we have a high p-value like this, it means the likelihood that we are wrong is high, and the amount of time spent preparing for that interview does not actually affect landing the job as much as we thought. Next, when we look at the variable of how prepared the individuals actually felt, we have a p-value far less than 0.05. So when an individual goes into the interview personally feeling prepared, no matter the time they put in, they are more likely to land the job. This variable also has the highest coefficient, meaning that a change in this x is going to cause the biggest change in our y. Going into this project, we as a team believed that having more connections within a company that you might be interviewing with was going to be the most significant in landing that certain job. While it's the second lowest p-value, it's still far above the magic p-value we look at when deciding what variables to consider. Lastly, we looked at the effect of having previous experience on landing whatever job that you might be interviewing for. This variable had the highest p-value of 0.68, again meaning that there is a very high likelihood that we are wrong in saying that there is a relationship between these two variables. The key takeaway from the overall regression is that the feeling of being prepared for an interview has the largest effect on being granted a final offer. This is interesting because a speaker told my class that the key to an interview is not a 4.0, not past experience, but having the courage and confidence to go in and prove that you're the right person for that job. Something that helped us in the long run was how we set up our survey. Each respondent gave us information on not one, but 3 companies they interviewed with, in turn giving us triple the amount of data to run a regression with. All different types of jobs were considered in our regression as well, which shows that we did a good job of getting our survey out to people in all different types of majors. When we brainstormed as a team reflecting on what we could have done differently, we think we could have included a question in our survey asking if the position was for an internship, part-time, or full-time job. We think this could have affected the data not knowing the specifics of the position because you may be spending more time preparing for a full-time job interview than just one for a summer internship. Lastly, we wanted to thank you for such a great semester. I think we can each agree that coming to your class every Tuesday and Thursday, despite the fact that it was an 8 a.m., was a highlight of the semester. Your passion for market research and your attempt at dad jokes, not as often as we'd hoped, but that's all right, made this class way more than bearable.